Well, hello, ladies. Hello, gentlemen. Welcome to Victor Davis Hanson in his own words. We are recording on Sunday, November 30th. I'm Jack Fowler. Lucky man, I get to ask Victor questions. Victor is Victor Davis Hanson, the Martin and Neely Anderson Senior Fellow at the Hoover Institution and a senior contributor at the Daily Signal, which is the happy home of Victor Davis Hanson in his own words. Victor has a website, The Blade of Perseus. Its address is victorhanson.com. I will tell you later in this episode why you should be subscribing. This episode will be up on Tuesday, December 2nd. Victor, as ever, a ton of things to get your opinion, take, analysis on. And I think we should start off today with two things. Donald Trump and his edict on the illegality of the Joe Biden Autopen, and Sean Duffy, the Secretary of Transportation, with some advice on how to travel or how not to travel, which I know is a topic dear to your heart. And we'll get to those topics and plenty more when we come back from these initial important messages.
Freedom is on the line, and time is running out. This Giving Tuesday, your help is urgently needed to defend innocent lives, protect Christian ministries, and safeguard the future of American families. This is a critical moment to act. We have 4 cases before the U.S. Supreme Court this term that could shape the future of freedom in this country. Real people are counting on you. Courageous clients are stepping forward to fight for justice, and your gift gives them the power to keep going. We need to raise $250,000 by December 2nd. Thanks to a limited time match, every dollar becomes $2. That means twice the impact, twice the defense, twice the hope. But only while funds last. There's no time to wait. Give now. Help protect freedom. With God's blessing, we'll keep winning in the courtroom and in the culture.
We are back with Victor Davis Hanson in his own words, our first post-Thanksgiving episode. By the way, Victor, how was Thanksgiving?
Very good. I went to my daughter and her family up in Auburn. We had she has a nice place. It's kind of a refuge. They have chickens. They're getting rabbits.
Oh.
5 acres on a hill. So it was very good. I was a little disturbed, though. I got bombarded over Thanksgiving holidays, and as you I talk, the Victor Davis Hanson in his own word show is not just beleaguered by this bizarro duplicate, the Victor Davis Hanson reruns, Victor Davis Hanson show reruns. I think there's 900 of them. But now this AI, I'm getting so many emails. We don't use the F word. We don't use any profanity, but there's all sorts of things on the internet, and some of them have 100,000 downloads, and they have my body, and my mouth is moving in a script that I didn't write. It's nothing to do with me. It's a little subtle because it's at a speed faster than I usually speak with a slightly different accent, but my gosh, there's 4 or 5 sites, Victor Davis Hanson, and they're not authentic. So this is the only authentic Victor Davis Hanson in his own word show. And I don't know what... I talked to my agent, who's wonderful, and both of them. And I have, 26 books, and 18 of them now have audio versions that are pirated AI.
Swiped. Really? Oh, so, not really, like surprise.
Yeah. So, and then
troubling.
I turn on. I was just curious. Have you noticed this when you get these emails that come to you that you didn't solicit, and they're ads, and they have people like Laura Ingraham talking to you, and it's not Laura Ingraham at all, or Martha McCallum. That's not them at all. So I don't know what they're going to do about all this, but it's intellectual theft and piracy, copyright. It seems to me infringement. And it's not anymore just the gimmicks of 5 years ago where somebody would send you something that looked like it was funny. It's now a whole black market industry to take people's content, and it has 2 pernicious results. One is it destroys your ability to to keep going financially, because they are drawing off audience and they run ads on them. And the second is they impute things to you you've never said.
Right.
And in these tricky, touchy times, you have to be very careful. So if anybody sees me on the internet, be sure it's me, is what I'm trying to say.
Well, let's say 90% of the time you record from where you are recording right now,
Mm-hmm.
at your old stable. But
Mm-hmm.
sometimes you're in a hotel, but the
Yeah.
background is what it is. And I saw a guy, Joe, who's one of the administrators at the Victor Davis Hanson fan club, sent me a link and he says, "Is this Victor?" And he kind of knew it wasn't, but it was like 90% there, except the background was, and your face, I mean, it's your face, and they actually had your microphone with the brand of the extension on it.
I think they
So,
Photoshop the picture and then they just add a script.
yeah,
And I don't know what the implications are, but
yeah,
there has to be some type of regulation and penalty for that. Stealing.
yeah.
It's kind
Well,
of like plagiarism in a way. You're taking content from somebody else, but it's worse actually because you're taking their voice, their face, their brand, and then you're inserting into their mouth a
right.
script that they don't approve of and often they don't agree with, and you're doing this for financial gain. So I hope it stops
Yeah,
quickly.
yeah, thievery has to be the essence of it. Although, Victor, there are some people out there just for the hell of it. And you remember, not too long ago, there was a guy who you did an interview with, legitimate interview
Mm-hmm.
at Hoover,
Yes.
and then would take these and cut them up and chop them up and put them out there. Yeah,
Yeah,
for financial
if he's
gain.
listening, he knows who he is. He was a young graduate student. I won't give you any more information about him. And he wanted to have a podcast, and he kept bugging my assistant if I would go on it to help jumpstart his platform, and I did. And then, he asked for 45 minutes, we ended up doing an hour. If he asked for an hour, he ended up doing an hour and 15 minutes. And it was just, kind of like a garage laptop type fly-by-night. And then
Yeah.
I didn't say anything, but I noticed he was saying that he had interviewed me, and he was using that interview to get other interviews, and then one thing led to another, and every 6 months he would call up. And then I've noticed that he had a whole production team, in the sense team meaning equipment, movable cameras. He really went upscale. He got huge audiences, and then he took the interviews and chopped them up into 1 or 2 minute segments and then marketed them, which I kind of resented without my permission. But then what got me very angry was he used AI and had me saying things at my farm and stuff that I didn't. I mean, it was not me. Maybe he took what was in my mouth, but he made it in different locales that were not genuine or authentic. So the result of all that was I just said, no more, I'm not going to do it. And the fact that he was a supposed intellectual or a graduate student in the humanities made it even more ironic, I thought. So, and I'll never do it again with him. Never, ever, period. And so it's just, when you try, you get into these situations where people come and say, would you help me and get me started? And then you see that they're manipulating you and you're kind of I don't know, a dummy. You don't like to be used like that.
Well, Victor, since we're talking about fake things, let's talk about the Autopen, which was used by Joe Biden in thousands of ways to free people, criminals, hardcore criminals, murderers, dirtbags, etc. And we've heard a lot about this for the last year, and Donald Trump has put out a statement the other day, and I'd like to get your comments on it. Here's what he wrote on Truth Social. Any document signed by Sleepy Joe Biden with the Autopen, which was approximately 92% of them, is hereby terminated and of no further force or effect. The Autopen is not allowed to be used if approval is not specifically given by the President of the United States. The radical left lunatics circling Biden around the beautiful Resolute desk in the Oval Office took the presidency away from him. I'm hereby canceling all executive orders and anything else that was not directly signed by crooked Joe Biden, because the people who operated the Autopen did so illegally. Joe Biden was not involved in the Autopen process, and If he says he was, he will be brought up on charges of perjury. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Your thoughts, Victor?
That raises a lot of issues. Number one, I don't know how you post facto go back and undo things that he did. I mean, I don't know why he pardoned Hunter Biden, Mark Milley, I think, Fauci. Are all those invalid? And if so, who adjudicates that? What if they say, no, he's pardoned me? So they're all going to have to go through the courts. When Trump says things like Sleepy Joe Biden and all of this, people say, they kind of, roll their eyes and there goes Trump. But actually, he's responding to something that is quite egregious. We've never had it in American history. We came close with Woodrow Wilson and Edith Wilson covering up his stroke for over a year, but we never really had a president that at some point, I think in the campaign of 2020, there were two decisions made. One, that the Democratic Party was going to lose, according to the polls, if they nominated a Elizabeth Warren, a Cory Booker, a Bernie Sanders, a Pete Buttigieg, etc. And two, given that Joe Biden was the only viable candidate, they were going to use him as a moderate veneer and sell him to the American people as a return to normalcy. That is, we would start remembering what Joe Biden said in the 70s and 80s. Remember when he talked about a jungle and crime and his poor mother was endangered and he was against illegal immigration. So they passed that non-existent Joe Biden, and as a waxen effigy, then they used him. And they perpetrated the most radical agenda, I think more radical than the New Deal. They destroyed the border. They destroyed jurisprudence as we know it. They weaponized all of the DOJ, the FBI, the CIA. They destroyed deterrence abroad. They sort of begged Iran to get back in the Iran deal. The Kabul pullout was the worst military disaster in the last 50 years. It empowered Putin to go into Afghanistan. I could go on, but so Trump has a point, and the question is, they knew he was incompetent, non compos mentis. He was not in control of his faculties. And then they had another agenda, and that was to get particular green, DEI, ESG, radical initiatives into the cabinetcies and the institutions that had no public support. And they put them on the desk, and they used the Autopen. And to the degree Joe Biden knew about it, and I don't think he even did, there's no way that he can ever, under oath, identify any of those things in detail. Just no way it's going to happen. So then the question is, are they going to call in the people who did it? And what will they say? Well, I talked to Biden. I have it. Well, do you have documents? No. And then people are saying, to what degree has Trump, as all presidents, used the Autopen? And he'll have to explain that he has done it on his direction, or he has an executive order, or he has a written chief of staff order, or somebody is in the room with him. I don't know, but he's got a good point is what I'm trying to say, and it sounds crazy, but what was really crazy is what they did. This was the biggest sham perpetrated on the American people in my lifetime. It makes Watergate look like a joke. They had somebody who completely was a zombie and didn't know where he was or what he was saying, and they used him as a prop to, as I said, to initiate and advance a radical agenda that, had it been explicit and open, and people knew what they were going to do about the border or crime or critical race, critical legal theory or DEI, they would have never voted for it. And they knew that, and that's why they kicked out all the other nominees. They, like dominoes, they quit the primary of 2020. He hadn't won Nevada, he hadn't won New Hampshire, he hadn't won Iowa, and Jim Clyburn and everybody said, I will deliver the black vote in South Carolina, and we will win. And then we'll get them all out. We'll promise them various things. We'll promise Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders a socialist agenda. We will promise Pete Buttigieg a cabinet post, etc. And that's where we are. And Trump he's got a right to be furious, and that he doesn't speak about it in sober and judicious tones is, a lot of people resent that, but compared to what actually happened, his description, as uncouth and crude as it can be, is absolutely spot on.
Yeah. Victor, I've mentioned this before on previous podcasts, but these folks who've had their sentences commuted, et cetera, by Biden, by the Autopen anyway, it would be wonderful if some, not necessarily conservative organization, but some organization that was truly interested in justice would track each of these. Take Adrian Peeler, who was a truly evil man from Connecticut who killed killed witnesses before a murder trial. He's been in jail for 20-something years, yet his sentence was commuted by Joe Biden, by the Autopen. Why? Who was behind it? How did that get to that point? Like, in whose interest did it serve to get this lowlife freed? And how many other situations are there like this?
Well, they do it again. They'll do it again. They'll do laptop disinformation. They'll do Russian collusion. They'll do the Mar-a-Lago raid. They'll get them off the ballot. They'll do all of that again. That's why everybody seems to say, well, you can't have tit for tat because you'll take the republic down the drain in vengeance. Yes, that's true, but if it's measured and judicious and it's targeted for actual things that were committed, then it's necessary. And what I'm getting at is there's a lot of culpability of James Comey besides just, I think, lying under oath that he didn't order or he did not excuse direct leaking to the media, contrary to what Andrew McCabe and others have said. So we'll see. But
tit
anyway,
for tat, there could be no, I'm not response to the Democrats' tat. There could be nothing. And then when Democrats get back in power, they're still going to tat, regardless of the Republicans.
Yeah, the other thing is all of these issues, the Autopen issue. Now, I don't know what happened to the Epstein files. We were told by the Democrats that this was the issue of the entire Trump presidency. And even people on the right said, well, he's hiding something. No, he wasn't. It was completely irrelevant. And 80 to 90% of the people in there were Democrats. They had the so-called files to the extent they even existed as formal files. Everybody knew that. They knew Trump was not involved with Jeffrey Epstein's sexual fantasies on his island. They knew that after he disowned and separated himself from Epstein before he was a convicted pedophile, sexual assaulter, and many of the Democrats welcomed Epstein, including Larry Summers, after he was a known child molester. So then Trump released it. And he had good sense enough to say that it was going to distract from what I'm getting at, is the economy. And then all of a sudden the Democrats kind of said, wow, it's released. Okay. Oh, we didn't know. We had it for 4 years. We didn't know 80 or 90% of them are Democrat. We don't want to get involved in this. I don't know what Bill Clinton was doing. I don't know what Bill Gates were doing. I don't want to know. It's over with. It's gone. Done. Zero. And that's one of the reasons Marjorie Taylor Greene kind of imploded. She staked her entire career that Donald Trump was covering up for big donors and sexual escapades on the part of the right, and she was going to be a truth teller and a maverick, and he called her bluff. And he released them, and he tried to warn her that the Democrats had it for 4 years, and there is a reason that Democrats didn't release it. She didn't listen. And now it served its purpose. That's what I'm trying to get at in this clumsy fashion. It served its purpose the same way as the shutdown served its purpose, the same way as the laptop, the collusion, the same thing as the ICE demonstrations, the same thing as the firebombing, the Teslas, the same thing as the National Guard or slave patrols, the same thing as everything. They distract from the truth of the economy. The truth of the economy is that Joe Biden averaged 5.2% inflation every single year, 21% aggregate. He left in January with 3% inflation. Donald Trump, 10 months later, averaged 3% inflation. Joe Biden got about $1 trillion, if you're generous, in foreign investment in 1 year. If you take half of what Donald Trump claims, there'll be $10 trillion in foreign investment this year alone. And if you look at the GDP in the fourth quarter, what it's anticipated, even with a shutdown, it's going to be 3 or 3.5. So if you look at Doge, we were told it would only get $75 billion in revenue. It could get 300 or 400. There was no stock market crash. There was no recession. There was no trade war, none of that. And all of these things were long-term investments. So when the big, beautiful bill, such as it is, starts to kick in with massive deregulation, tax cuts, full speed ahead on energy, we're pumping 14 million barrels. No nation in history has ever done that.
Yeah.
And more natural gas in history. And he's going to increase it. So somewhere around March or April, this economy is really going to get even better. But that's not what the Democrats want to hear. That's not what they want the people to hear. So it's Epstein, Epstein, Epstein. It's Tesla, Elon Musk. It's ICE or Gestapo. These are SS. We'll cut a video telling soldiers to disobey orders. It's all a distraction. And somehow they convinced the American people that after having hyperinflation of 9.2 in 2022 and spiking prices 21%, on everything, but if you look at insurance and staple foods and energy, then you're getting up to 25 to 35%.
Yeah.
California, 40 or 50% in some things. After doing all of that, they go out of office and turn around and say, affordability, affordability, affordability. Trump hasn't undone all the damage we did. We did 21% inflation in 4 years. He's been here 10 months. And he's still got 3% inflation, but we never got 3% on average. That was just the last month or two we were in office. We averaged 5.2%. And the people bought it. They did. And part of the reason they bought it is what we're talking about. It was a distraction. And the people in the Trump administration were not able to keep their eye on the prize. It's the economy, stupid. It really is.
Yeah.
And they got to drum that in every single day because they're going to have a very good economy.
Well, Victor, to our viewers and listeners, if you've studied enough history, you start to see a pattern. Nations don't lose their way overnight. They drift through debt and division until one day you realize the foundations you thought were permanent were never permanent at all. Today, America is spending at levels once reserved for wartime. We've normalized deficits that would have stunned earlier generations, and policymakers now debate whether the only path forward is more intervention, more printing, more distortion. But here's the historical truth. Every society that pushed its currency beyond discipline eventually paid a price. The wise never waited for collapse. They prepared for the correction. And that's why so many thoughtful Americans, especially those nearing retirement or in retirement, are reallocating part of their wealth into something that has outlasted every paper experiment in human history. We're talking about physical gold, not as speculation, but as insulation. Reputation matters, which is why we are partnering with Allegiance Gold, a company distinguished by integrity, reliability, and an A-plus rating with the Better Business Bureau. For years, they've guided Americans through transparent education and long-standing relationships built on trust. And right now, they're extending a special Liberty offer for our listeners or viewers to help you get started with real gold, whether your funds are in a retirement account or sitting in a bank. If you believe that the best time to reinforce your position is before the storm becomes obvious, then here, now get a pencil and piece of paper. Write this down. Call 844-790-9191, 844-790-9191, or visit protectwithvictor.com. That's 844-790-9191. One more time here, 844-790-9191, or visit protectwithvictor.com. History rewards those who take the long view. And we are very thankful for the good people at Allegiance Gold for sponsoring Victor Davis Hanson in his own words. Victor, before we take a break, I mean, you're a man who's traveled so much, not so much recently. You've not been in you haven't been in an airport for a bit. You've certainly enough times in your life to make up,
I was doing
for,
three out-of-state visits a month for,
yeah.
I don't know, 30 years.
And you always had the good fortune to have events happen on your flights. And not everything was an event, but as many people, you just go on a plane and you think you're in I don't know, some hobo, some sleepover, whatever. So Senator
Greyhound. That's unfair to Greyhound.
Yeah, it's true. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy came out with a statement right before the Thanksgiving travel, and long overdue. Folks, could you please have a little dignity when you travel? Can you wear? Don't take your shoes off. No, don't wear pajamas, etc. Victor, your thoughts on this?
I was sitting. The last flight I flew was by myself. Was with a woman next to me. And she had a hoodie on and sweatpants, and she was wrapped in 3 blankets right next to me, and she was on the phone as we were taxiing to her daughter. I was not spying or trying to overhear her. She was so loud. And she said, my temperature, I just took it. It's only 102. I think I can get home without, I don't know what it is, but I'm afraid I got COVID again. And that was the person right next to me, and she was enormous. She weighed about 300 pounds, and she had about 3 blankets on, sweating. And no, I didn't have a mask. So when I went it's not just that people wear sweatpants or yoga pants, and the people who do shouldn't. I've never understood the idea of wearing yoga pants that reveals defects in anatomy. I mean, I have defects in anatomy. I would never wear a skin-tight polo shirt. I have a gut, I suppose. But the point I'm making is it wasn't just casual. It was, when there was no respect. And then we started with pets that were for the blind, which I support, of course. And then we had, for people depressed, that the dogs were, what was the word for that? When you bring a dog,
service animal.
Service dogs. And then we just had dogs and cats and birds. And you get there if you're sitting there and a woman or a guy next to you says, Toto's a nice dog, he won't bother you, I'm just going to put him down at your feet, and he passes wind every 5 minutes while you're flying, and he kind of laughs. Or you're sitting there and a kid in the back thinks he's on a roller coaster, so he starts kneeing your back again and again and again. Or the person ahead of you, even before you're at 10,000 feet, puts his seat all the way back. And then if you try to go back, the person yells in your ear, don't do that. So it's partly 200 people, 300 people, 80 people in a little tuna can at 40,000 feet. I understand that, but the airlines never made any effort to say, their effort was, let's get as many people on this plane as possible. Let's overbook it and get as many flights, and we're going to cut down the profit margin, and we're going to make this cheaper than bus travel. And they did, and they never say anything. And then you sit there, and I got to the point that I would say 1 out of 2 flights, I was in danger because I was leaving from Fresno, and it was very hard most of the time to get a connection. And then you get on there, and then people have this miraculous recovery. They get on this wheelchair, and they don't even make a pretense that they're disabled. They're just standing up or this, and then they get on, and then you're trying to board, and then if a person says that they are disabled, the whole family comes on as service people, like 5 to escort ahead so that they can all get space. So then even if you have a business class and it says business class only, there's luggage that people put in that accompanied somebody disabled. And then you think, okay, so we have 17 wheelchairs. Maybe we'll still make the connection. And then you get there, and all of a sudden, everybody's cured. It's sort of like, I don't know, magical waters or a hot thermal baths or something, because when you want to get that connection, they jump up.
Yeah.
all the people that were disabled. And then there's always about every fifth flight, there was the meltdown. And the meltdown was someone did not get on. I mean, somebody comes to the airport with a standby ticket, and they go to the desk and say, am I going to make it? And there's 5 names up there. Yes, you'll probably make it. And then 1, 2, 3, 4 get on, and then they're waiting and waiting, and the doors close. Well, you said I was going to make it. Well, we didn't know. We had a late ticketed arrival, or there was an air marshal, or something like that. They don't even say air marshal, but the person then melts down and starts screaming, then turns to all the people there. Or you're on the plane, and there's every 5th flight, there is an incident. I was on a flight where a woman decided that she said in the back that she had the nicest cleavage, that's a euphemism, of anybody on the plane. And so she took off all of her sweatshirt and her bra and sat there. And the man next to her could not stop staring. She's very young and attractive. And then she got up and had to walk up and down. And everybody said, you're gonna cost us. We're going to have to go back. And then finally, a male attendant came there with a blanket and put it over her and said, if you take the blanket off, we're all going to have to turn back. And then, she put her clothes back on, and then as she walked out, she stuck her tongue at everybody and said,
Wow.
why are you doing this to me? So, I mean, it was, you put 200 people on a flight, there's a chance that, 1% are crazy.
Yeah.
And then you add the Frito boat that's right next to you when they bring in the whole entree of foods. And then and then you have the guy who's in business class, he's either a politician, I won't mention the name, I know a politician who did this, but a celebrity, a politician, a CEO, and he just thinks that his phone call is so important.
Yeah,
I'll say
Chuck Schumer.
Sir, sir, could you please put away your mobile phone? We're taxing now, and we're not allowed to do. Yes, of course, but this is just, I'll do it. Da 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 da. Sir, put the phone away. Yes, I know that. You've told me 5. You don't have to be rude about it. Sir, if you do not put the phone away, we're going to take it from you. You do that, and then it just, the pilot gets on.
Yeah.
So,
well,
I don't know. I just said, you know what? I'm 72 and I've had some lung problem. I'm not going to do it anymore. And then I got a lot of people who would call me. What? You're not going to fly over here? You're not going to fly to, it's not that far. Well, if I want to fly to Maine, or I want to fly to, Michigan, or I want to fly to Mississippi, it's get up at 3:00, go to the airport for the 5:30 flight, get the 45 connection at Denver or Salt Lake, and then fly another, 5 hours and hope that everything works perfectly. And it did for the first 20 years. Something about COVID or afterwards, there were too many people, then the connections, I was missing 40% of them.
Yeah.
And then a 6-hour flight. My favorite was a 24-hour flight to Hillsdale. I missed the connection in Salt Lake, and then I got another one, and we got over, and they said there was a storm, so we were going to divert to Grand Rapids because we had circled the Detroit airport too much. But don't worry, the tanker truck was on the tarmac, so it was a touchdown, fill up, back over. And as he assured us, this is a 30-minute flight detour. So we did there. There were 7 planes ahead of us, and the truck ran out of fuel. So we were there 3 hours. Then we got back. By the time another storm had come, we missed the window. So we circled again. And then I got to Hills. I left at 3 a.m. I got there at 3:30 in the morning.
Dang.
And
wow,
I got COVID the next day. So I just said, you know what? Life's too short. I used to love flying when it was so exciting. I was this farm boy, and I thought, wow, they're going to pay me $300 to speak in Arkansas, and I get to fly. And that was when I was a kid. I did that so often. I think I flew. Last summer was the first summer I was home in 25 years. I was gone in Europe 30 days a year.
Right.
But no more. I
Well,
sound like an old Ralph
you do.
Scrooge.
Just be glad you're not the Indian Victor, because I saw a clip of air travel in India, and the wheelchairs, there are like 70 of them. I mean, there's
Well,
something.
I want to tell you something. An Indian flight came into, an Indian flight came into SFO. My wife were there. There were 30 wheelchairs that had to accommodate them. And it was right at peak hour at customs at SFO, and there wasn't enough people there. We turned around, and all 30, without exception, had got out of their wheelchairs and were circled yelling and screaming at each other. And the people who were running that, and no, the people who were attending it were not white. They were from another minority. I think most of them were from the Philippines. They were the most polite, capable professionals. And they said, either get in your wheelchairs or we'll take the wheelchairs away.
Yeah.
But I don't know, I don't want to get another topic, but
Yeah.
I'm a big supporter of legal-only immigration. But Mark Krikorian and I once had an argument. I really like him. He's a very good guy. And he made the argument that we should go down to 100 or 150,000, not a million.
Right.
I thought that was extreme.
Legal.
But when I look at what's going on in Somalia, the terrorism, and then the hundreds of thousands who came, and what has happened in Minnesota, and I hear what Ilhan Amar has said about her adopted country, that it's trashy, that it's got a dictatorship worse than Somalia. Then I look at the evidence, and I think there's a compelling case. Scott Johnson at Powerline has been instrumental in showing that she married her brother and she committed immigration fraud. And now we learn there's a multi-billion-dollar theft of food programs from the Somali community, and they hid behind DEI, and Tim Walsh was instrumental in giving them de facto exemption. Then every day in the national news, there's somebody who crossed the border, the southern border, and there was another one just today where it was drunk driving, assault, kills a U.S. citizen and his family. It's almost daily
Denver?
fare.
Yeah.
Yes, daily fare.
Yeah.
Then we have the truck drivers who came from India and were illegal, and they were given licenses with no name on them, or in the case of California, 40,000 licenses without proper certification. They could even read English. And when you drive down a California freeway and you see a truck weave at 75 miles an hour, and he's passing somebody going 70, and he wants to get in the middle lane, and occasionally on a 3-lane freeway, they'll get in the far left lane, and they don't know how to drive. I just think that we need a timeout. We have too many people. And so when Trump puts it in crude terms, no more for the third world, everybody gets angry. But his point is, if you're a melting pot society and you do not want to end up like Europe, then you have to have a Marshall Plan that when people come over, you have to instruct them in advance. You're here for a purpose. You rejected the culture of your own country. You want to integrate, assimilate, and acculturate into the United States. And when you come into Chicago or you come into Minneapolis, instead of saying, gimme, 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 you should say, who built this beautiful city? Where did it come from? Who are the immigrants that created this wonderful culture out of the prairie? If you come to Fresno, California, you should say, my gosh, these were neoclassical buildings on the mall. Who were these people? They're all in the graveyards, but I owe a great debt of gratitude. It's much nicer than Guatemala. We don't have anything like it in Mexico. I'm so happy to be here. But when you have the hosts that will not acculturate or integrate people, and you add the force multiplier that they're illegal, they don't know English, they don't have skills, they're impoverished, and they feel that the moment they cross the border, that they're eligible for diversity, equity, inclusion bias, because they have claims against a country that they've never set foot in, but because they're so-called non-white, And then you have Jasmine Crockett saying that because Donald Trump wants to let in 7,500 Afrikaners who are basically targeted in South Africa, that's supposedly multiracial paradise. And you've got 12 million, the vast majority came across the southern border and who are not white. She thinks that's racist. Jasmine, what's racist is the current immigration policy. It really is. And when you start to see people who give preference over U.S. citizens, that's what I cannot understand. The Afghan
Well, let's
illegal.
let's take a break, Victor, because we got to get on that Afghan shooting and the preference he got, and we'll do that when we come back from these important messages. We're back with Victor Davis Hanson in his own words, and my apologies to people who their hobby is to say I interrupt Victor the whole show. So I apologize.
No, I go on too long. I need to be interrupted.
Your soliloquies are wonderful. Let's talk about, Victor, the DC shooter and maybe a little more about Trump's edict on immigration, but let's focus on the DC shooter, the terrorist, the Afghani who was in Washington State, drove all the way to DC, murdered at least one, and the other National Guardsman his life is, as we're talking, is hanging in the balance. Your thoughts on this, Victor?
Well, the media didn't really report the whole story. He was reportedly of saying Allah Akbar, but as in the case of Major Hassan in 2013, who killed 13 soldiers, wounded 30, and yelled Allah Akbar, and they did not report it fully. And I think it was General Casey, excuse me if I'm wrong, I'm doing this by memory, Chief of Staff said, well, the great tragedy of this shooting would be if it endangers our diversity program. So we didn't get the full story. And then he was almost naked. And so people said, the implication was that he was roughed up and his clothes. No, he took off his clothes. And why he took off his clothes, I don't know. But it seems he thought he was on his way to paradise. But that's just conjecture on my part. But there was no evidence. Did he or did he not say Allah Akbar? Did he or not DeCarlos Brown? Was it a doctored video we all saw where he said, killed the white blank? Did or not Mr. Reed in Chicago say, burn girl, burn, or whatever he said? So the media doesn't really tell us and it's like the policy of BART and Oakland. They will not release violent crimes on mass transit because they feel to do so would show that black males are inordinately involved in crime, and we would make false stereotypes and therefore might not want to ride BART. And this is a system in California that wants you to spend another $150 billion on top of the $30 billion to have high-speed rail. And most Californians said, if you prayed to the archangel and he came down and built high-speed rail for nothing, beautiful system, and then he said, just run it, it would lose billions because people will not trust their safety to a state like California. And the same thing with all of this. So we bring this guy over and they say he was vetted. I like this term. No, Trump was wrong. He was vetted. What does vetted mean? In the last 24 hours when people are scrambling to get here, you say, this guy worked for us. But you don't really ask him, you don't sit him down in a room like he's in Ellis Island and ask him questions. Probably not. And then he drives all the way out across the country to blow the brains. He not only shot her in the head with his revolver, then he grabbed it and shot her, and then he executed her, basically. And why do we do this? Why do we do this? I don't understand. Why do we give preference? Say you didn't vet him and say that bringing all these people en masse was a mistake. Why would you compound that by giving him, was it $2,000 a month, a subsidy for an apartment for his family when U.S. citizens have to wait months for that? What's the rationale behind all of this?
Yeah.
And, when they say Trump's polls are going down, do you really, really think the American people want to go back to this, where you have every night Mayorkas on TV saying the border's secure, and you see 10,000 people swarming in And you know what it means? It means drunk driving, assaults, etc., etc. So I've kind of also changed on immigration, legal immigration even. I think we need to... I'm for legal immigration if you have a host that will acculturate and integrate and assimilate people and will teach people civics and the mechanics of what it means to be a citizen. But if they don't know God bless America, if they've never heard of Lou Gehrig, if they've never had any experience with the American system, and they think they're coming over here to create Dearborn, Michigan, in emulation of somewhere, it doesn't make any sense to keep doing it, because you're creating ethnic enclaves that are hostile to the United States.
Well, Stephen Miller came out and said something yesterday. I think it was Stephen Miller on Breitbart. We are importing cultures as opposed to importing individuals.
And you see, the problem is the people who are for this, forget the government and the Democratic Party and the left. We know why they're doing it. They're doing it because they have a message that the majority of Americans born in the United States do not want. So they want to bring in constituencies. They want to change balloting laws for early voting and mail-in balloting, and then call anybody racist that objects to it. And then they get people who are on public support to vote for them. And the public support, it's $63 billion in remittances to Mexico. It's $65 billion to Central America. It's another $100 billion to India. So altogether, it's about, in all the countries in the world, it's nearly $1 trillion of money sent out by people, not all, but for the most part, are on public assistance. So that's the logic behind it. And we're supposed to say, please, please, stop this. You're a racist. You're a nativist. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead and do it. I don't want to be a racist. It doesn't work anymore. And if you're not, and the central problem, as I said, is that the people are coming in can't accept the paradox that they're in. If you come from Iraq, if you come from Gaza, if you come, and I'm just taking places where there is a violent, what Donald Trump said, quote unquote, a hellhole, or Haiti, and you come here, then you should understand why you came here. You came here to get security, prosperity, freedom, the rule of law that was not found in your own homeland. You voted. We didn't send a telegram to somebody in the West Bank that said, please come over, we need your genius here. No, we didn't.
Right.
You came.
Right.
And often you came illegally. And when you got here, don't go into our universities and start pushing Jews around and saying pro-Hamas. We don't want that here. I don't mean Victor doesn't want that. I mean the majority of Americans don't want that. So we need to have a brutal bargain return. You came here. You left your country. It's our job to do something. I was driving down yesterday. I went in, and this was a checkerboard of small 40 to 80 acre farms, and it was multiracial and multi-ethnic. I think I've mentioned that. I had 8 or 9 neighbors. They were originally immigrants from India. They were immigrants from Mexico, Armenia, Japan, etc. There wasn't just white. There was, I think, our farmer and one other was so-called white, but they were all fervent pro-American, and
you were e pluribus unum.
It was a natural melting pot, and there was zero crime. Nobody had a key to their door. Everybody farmed 40 to 80 acres. Everybody worked. The kids never got in trouble. They're wonderful people. They produced some of the best citizens in the world. And today, in that same circumference, I would say there's probably 50 active gang members, no doubt. And I would say that there's only 2 to 3 people who own their home that are living in it. And I would say that I could walk into any of those homes, quote unquote, because they're compounds with Winnebagos and add-ons, and find 150 building violations, code violations, animal cruelty, etc. Okay, so I'm driving down through here, and I turn, and then I go, and the first canteen has a flag. It's Mexico. And then I go to another religious, very good place, not wonderful people there, but it has a Sikh flag. And I'm thinking, why not? Sometimes there's an American flag, but this day there wasn't. So I'm thinking, why would you come here and leave these countries and then have these ethnic food or ethnic assemblages, but you wouldn't put an American flag here? Why would you do that? What's the message you're sending to Americans? I don't understand. I don't want to be in your country. I'm not proud of your country. I'm more proud of the country I left and no longer want to live there. So I think people are getting very tired of it. And I got a lot of criticism for Mexifornia, not from just the left, because it was a melting pot book, but people from the paleo right, and said, Victor, you want to let people from all over the third world come in. And I didn't distinguish that. I still believe in what I wrote in Mexifornia, but when I wrote that 25 years ago, there was a melting pot still, a vestigial one. If you don't have a melting pot and you don't have confidence in your culture and civilization and history, and you're not ready to acculturate people in that tradition, then you're going to be like Europe. It's not going to work.
Well,
and the attitude right now, Jack, is that people, they don't fight back. They just move. Everybody I notice, every single person that used to live here has moved. They're gone. Some of them went to the Bay Area, but most of them went out of state, or they're living on the coast of California. They left. And they basically, to the degree I even knew they were gone, they said, I can't live there anymore. I'm not going to live there anymore. I'm sorry.
Remember the old Tarrytown, I think it was Tarrytown cigarette, I'd rather fight than switch. But we're in a time I'd rather switch than fight.
Well, I mean, everybody says to me, they say, why are you still there?
Yeah.
Don't you get tired? Yeah, I think I mentioned with Sammy 2 days ago, I see a truck right across there. A guy waves to me. I notice he's just sitting on the side of the road in front of Orchard. And then I walk my 2 miles. I come back 20 minutes later, and there's a huge mattress where he was.
Oh, gosh.
Sitting right one corner almost in Mountain View. And then I try to cross the road because I go on both sides, and there's a truck with 2 trailers of granite or fill dirt going about 75 miles an hour, but with an ethnic, I don't know whether it's legal, but truck driver, and there's three or four every 10 minutes, and they're going 75. I just look at the pavement's cracking, and this has been going on for high-speed rail construction for about 2 months, and I think, Wait. The speed limit is 55 miles an hour on a 2-lane country road. You've got 20 tons of dirt or gravel on that truck. You can't just drive 70 miles an hour. It's not safe. You're going to endanger people. You can't pass somebody with a semi-truck on a 2-lane road going 70 miles an hour. And does anybody teach you that?
No.
That's my gripe.
You and I were talking on the phone about a week or so ago, and I heard in the background, because you've mentioned this once before, and I could hear the trucks, the rumble, and boom, and every.
I did a radio
like every 2 or 3 minutes.
Yeah, I did a radio interview and from my cell phone about a week ago, and they said we're going to put you on in 5 minutes, and I had the phone. And then he came on after 2 minutes, and he said, are you guys having an earthquake, or what's going on there? And I said, no, there's 2 or 3 semi-trucks, and they're going down to Highway 41, and then they're going to fill in for the new high-speed rail. It'll spend $15 to $30 billion without 1 foot of track. And they think that, I guess they get paid by the load, and they're going about 70 miles an hour with 20 tons on this little road, and it's about, from where I'm speaking, it's about 25 yards from here.
Yeah.
And I just drove for Thanksgiving. It was a nightmare just watching the way they drive, the truck drivers in Gavin Newsom's California. And so I just think, it has nothing to do with ethnicity or race. I think everybody understands that it's culture, but nobody cares what color you are or how you look or where you came from. All they care about is one thing. Will you adopt and embrace the culture of the last 250 years that was created before you ever got here? and was superior in your view, not mine. I'm not even going to weigh in on that. I think it was, but it's your view that it was superior to your own culture, or you wouldn't be here. And if you don't think it's superior, then you can go back.
Well,
But you made the choice, and we're here to teach you why that choice was wise. Yes, you came from India. Yes, you came from Guatemala. Yes, you came from Mexico. And yes, you came from Somalia. And you want help. Okay, here it is. Here's how you salute the flag. Here's how you learn English. Here's how you obey the laws. Here's how you pay your taxes on time. Here's why you don't go 55 miles an hour over in a country road with 20 tons. It's not hard to think. Or you don't go and join M13 or Sureños or Norteños or Trent. None of that. You don't do that in this country. But it's
well. Let's look at that a little more, Victor. Through I wanted to discuss the oath of allegiance with you, and then also a little more about this murdering Afghan terrorist and how he was vetted, and how
you're so judgmental.
Yeah, I know. I'm gonna have to go to confession. Well, I'll do that later, but we'll come back from these important messages and get to those final topics. We are back with Victor Davis Hanson in his own words. I want to remind our listeners and viewers that Victor's website, The Blade of Perseus, victorhanson.com, is a place you should be checking out frequently. Tons of free stuff, links to Victor's articles for American Greatness and his syndicated columns and his various appearances and his books. But then there are also the ultra articles and video that he does exclusively for The Blade of Perseus. And to read them, to watch the videos, you need to subscribe. It's $65 for the full year, which is discounted from $650 a month. It's like 2 free months. So go to The Blade of Perseus, victorhanson.com, and do sign up. And maybe that's the Christmas present you should be giving yourself. Or maybe you know somebody who's a VDH fan. That would make a great present. Victor, let's stick to the shooter, and then if we have time, get to my little idea on the Oath of Allegiance. But two things. One is this was on CNN 2 days ago. Senior Justice correspondent Evan Perez stated that while Afghans from the unit that the quote-unquote suspected shooter were vetted, quote, there's been a struggle to try to make sure that the vetting was appropriate. I'll tell you this. There were examples of people who essentially bought backgrounds from the brokers. And he goes on to say that this is something, obviously it's been known since Joe Biden unleashed this madness on the world and on America, and it has perplexed and been of great concern to the FBI, these bogus backgrounds, and kind of stains all, and maybe they should all be stained and all thrown out. Your thoughts, Victor, on if any more thoughts on the troubling vetting process?
It's there's no accountability. First of all, when you have this administrative state, what are you going to do for someone? Somebody comes into you and says, you know what, that guy, I think he had a bot CV and I let him go. Okay. But we might not promote you next year. There's no consequences for the state. And you can see it here when I drive in California, when I see a private construction zone, like they're building an apartment building, they're pretty careful about, signs, warnings. When I see the state doing it, the employees, they seem to be much more lax. So who's going to sue them? There's no consequences. So the larger the government you have, the more people who are not going to have consequences for any mistakes they make. And then let's be honest. It's one thing we try to do in this show. We don't try to offend people or incite people, but try to tell the truth. DEI is embedded in immigration.
Yeah.
What I'm getting at is we bombed Serbia and we bombed parts of Bosnia. If we had taken Serbian Orthodox civilians that disagreed with Milosevic and we brought them in mass, we would have vetted them. If we bring these 75 or 8,500 South Africans, we will vet them. If this border to the north was being swarmed by right-wing white trucking Canadians that were mad at Trudeau, 110,000 a day, we would have vetted them.
Oh,
but when you arbitrarily cut the country in two, and that's what Obama did, he introduced it. Biden and whoever was the brain or the ignoramus behind Biden said 70% of you are oppressors and victimizers, and 30% are oppressed and victimized. And you said, wait a minute. Indian Americans have the highest income in the United States. Japanese Americans have the highest income. Arab Americans make more. I don't care. Class doesn't matter. It's all race, 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 color, color, color. When you do that and you divorce it from class and then you divorce it from prior demonstrable oppression, so somebody comes from Oaxaca and he said, well, you're here illegally? Fine. Your kids are eligible for affirmative action because of historic discrimination against whom? The Mexican government that is terrible toward people who are indigenous in Oaxaca? We're not the Mexican government. But when you do that, then you're going to have problems. And it's true of every ideological exemption there is, if it's not empirical. Same thing with the Green New Deal. If you say, we need Green New Deal, you can't criticize it, or you're a retrograde Neanderthal and you burn up owls in a solar plant that doesn't work, or your batteries blow up in Monterey, California, or your new high-speed rails of boondock. How dare you do that? Or wind turbines out are making whales sick.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. It's an ideology, and ideologies can't be questioned. So DEI is an ideology, and you can't question it. But it's completely based on a false premise that all prejudice is directed in one direction, and it has nothing to do with anything other than race, not class, nothing.
Yeah.
And so that is the catalyst behind the immigration. If Trump really wanted to have a legal, he would just say, we are going to go back to the old quota system. And we are going to look at people in a diverse fashion. And we're going to allow people from Europe and from Japan and very sophisticated countries, Korea, more. And we'll just say the more people who are educated and can come with capital and have knowledge of English, they're going to be fast-tracked. Because we've done the other thing for 60 years and we're going to try something different.
Yeah.
We're not going to say you can't come from the third world, but if you want to come and you have no means of support and you don't know English and you can't be vetted, you're going to have to wait for a while, a long while, and you're only going to come legally. And we'll see what happens. But we discriminate against the people who can speak English and have an education, We don't want them.
Yeah.
Especially Europe, I think we could get 5% of Europe to come immediately.
My gosh. Yeah.
They're so sick of what they're doing over there.
While you were talking, Victor, I was thinking about part of the original question here, and I don't want you to answer this because we're going to move on to another thing, but we'll talk about another show, is maybe the broad consequences. This murder in D.C. is a consequence of Joe Biden's Afghan bug out. And there's so many huge consequences to it, and we should look at that more broadly.
I'll just add, I don't want to delay, but we had spent $1 billion building a new embassy in a war-torn country. We left $50 billion plus in material and weapons. It's now on the terrorist world global market.
Right.
But we put $300 million into the Bagram airfare space, the old Soviet. It was wonderful. I don't know, it was 70 or 80 miles outside. It was completely defensible. All Biden had to do was say, we're going to gradually, in stages predicated on the Taliban's attitude, slowly withdraw. And we're going to do it from Bagram Air Force Base. And we have complete control of the skies here. We have complete security and we're going to take applications based on danger from retaliation from the Taliban or your work for the U.S., whatever. And we're going to do it formally over the next 4 months. It would have been fine. And then they could have said, you know what, we're going to keep 5,000 people here and we'll pay rent to the Taliban, but we want this Air Force base because it's strategically located with China, Russia, Iran. And that's all we're going to do. And we're not going to just put all his money in the country for 20 years and then hand this over to the Chinese or somebody. But why did he do that? The rumor was he wanted to get out by 9/11. So he could say that on 2021, on September 11th, Joe Biden and Joe Biden alone got everybody out of Afghanistan 20 years to the day after. So other people fought the war on terror. Joe Biden declared victory and ended it. And Mark Milley will go down in the infamy of generals when he was asked, as well as other leading officers in July, what's your assessment of the resiliency of the Taliban enemy, and more importantly, what's your assessment of the ability of Americans to withstand that? Well, I can just tell you that the Afghan army is just superb. Yeah. And the American, where there's no problem. It's secure. That was a complete fabrication.
Yeah.
That was horrible, the whole thing. I felt those 13 Marines that died.
Yeah. I feel Biden's motivation is much more psychological, and that he is just somebody that loves chaos, like some Marvel supervillain that with the city collapsing behind you. He is thrilled to that his whole career in politics, and that's what we got.
Remember how he looked at his watch when the bodies were flown home?
Yeah, it's just well, anyway. Not anyway, but one other thing. Maybe we'll get to this oath of allegiance. In the next show, we'll continue talking about immigration. But I want to mention something here, Victor, get your thoughts on the preference that we show people. So this National Guard murderer, I don't know if I'm saying his name right, Ramanullah Lakanwal. What happened was it says, and I'm reading here from Derek Evans, posted this on X. His wife, his 5 kids were moved straight to the Walton Place Apartments, subsidized housing in the Bellingham Housing Authority, and that's in Washington State. I believe Bellingham, by the way, is a pretty sweet town.
I've been there. I've spoken there. It's really beautiful.
Yeah. The wait list for American families is 6 months to 3 years. American elderly, disabled, single moms, and veterans are pushed aside, while Afghan migrants are given priority. How did this piece of blank repay America by taking lives of our troops? Victor, I was on the Housing Authority for about 5 years here in Milford, Connecticut. We have public and state and federal, etc. There is like no way you could get anyone onto a list at all. No matter their crises, it was a lottery. You had to sign up, and then when there was sufficient empty apartments, there was just no way for anyone to get to the head of a line. You would be arrested if you tried to get your grandma on the list at all, never mind into an apartment. And this guy gets free immediately.
I discussed this in The Dying Citizen. I went through a checklist of all the unique properties of citizenship versus non-citizenship. And the only one I could think and it's been 4 years since it was published, but the only one that I could think of that was uniquely confined to the citizen was holding office and voting. But now that people who are illegal can run for school board elections, I think in Cambridge, Mass. And Berkeley, and I think there's people that are holding office that are illegal we don't know about, but more importantly, in voting, there's so people can vote and hold office. So I don't think there's any advantage necessarily in the view of the immigrant to be a citizen. And more importantly, we privilege people who are not citizens. And again, it has something to do with DEI. It really does. It does. If this was Serbia and we were involved in bombing Serbs and we brought in a bunch of right-wing Serbs, people would go ballistic. They say, oh my gosh, this is a criminal state. Milosevic is Serbians and you're letting them stay here because we bombed their home? This is terrible. It wouldn't happen.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's necessarily race in the simplistic sense. It's just that on this DEI ideology, it's anybody who feels that they are oppressed by virtue of their ethnicity or race, and they appeal to this mostly elite liberal ideology that is dominant and pervades our institutions. So, Donald Trump is saying no more, and we'll see. But
Yeah,
I
it's
think the
kind.
majority agree with him by far.
I find, is it a limited no more? I'm looking at something where it's about halts all asylum decisions. Well, asylum decisions may be the vast majority of of the illegal incoming, and he pauses Afghan visas. So,
At
yeah,
least you have to do it from your own country. With Biden, you just crossed the border illegally one day and said, "I'm a refugee.
yeah,
I came here because I was in danger,"
yeah.
and that was.
I never that's how guys from the Congo came up through
I really,
Mexico.
yeah, I just believe that when you look back historically at the 4 years and what went on with 10 to 12 million illegal entries, it's going to be considered one of the worst decisions in the history of the country, what Biden did or whoever did it.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
then when you see the result of people who come here, whether they're born here as second generation, but they're not fully acculturated, or they're taught by their immigrant parents. In the case of AOC or Mondani or Tlaib or Ilhan Omar, and you hear what they say about the country and how they have to change it because it's so terrible and it's so racist. And then you look at their lifestyles compared to Puerto Rico or the West Bank or Somalia or Uganda. It's just it's just
yeah.
aggravating. You come here, you're now making millions of dollars in the case of Ilhan Omar, and you're very affluent. You're wearing designer clothes like AOC or Tlaib. You're very affluent, and yet you just
He's still a
blast this
victim.
country,
Yeah.
and it just
You're a
it's so
victim, and it gives you
frustrating.
the right to rage against the man. So, well,
Did they ever ask, Jack, who were the people who died on Okinawa? Who were the people who died in Iwo Jima? Who fought at Quezon? Who were the people who were blown up? Not that I'm not suggesting they were white. I'm suggesting they were citizens for the vast majority.
Yeah,
We had, when I was in high school, there was a wonderful Mexican-American person who died in Vietnam, and the school still has that award for him. And I knew another person Charles Venezuela, who was a good friend of mine who died in Vietnam. He was older than I was, but the point I'm making is all these people created this country. You just don't set foot in this country and then don't acknowledge the infrastructure and the traditions and safety and the prosperity.
well,
What's
not to detract from maliciousness of the left, but if you met a 20-year-old kid today and asked them if they knew there was even a war in Vietnam, say, or war with
Oh,
Korea.
I mean, that's part and parcel. You're absolutely right. The citizen himself or herself is part of an educational system that's therapeutic. And when they K through 12 is not, we're going to learn who Lou Gehrig is. We're going to learn what Henry Ford did. We're going to learn what Dred Scott was. No, it's, well, this is trans and this is gay and this is this and this, race,
Yeah,
class, gender, radical environmentalism. It's all deductive indoctrination, and they don't get facts and inductive thinking.
yeah.
And that's why they're so ignorant. They don't know anything.
I have a family member that teaches little ones, and even at the 3rd and 4th grade level, where you think the basic things you start off with, A is for, A is for apple. You know what A is for, Victor? It's not for apple anymore. A is for anxiety. And they this is what they're teaching little kids. That's I think social SEL. I forget what the SEL stands for. Social emotional learning. Yeah. So, hey, anyway, Victor, we've come to the end here. We're going to hold off on some of these other topics I mentioned. We'll get your thoughts on them, and then on the next show, I want to remind our viewers uh, to listen to or check out Victor Davis Hanson in his own words. Let your friends know about this also. Accept no imitations.
Yes, no talking AI, Victor.
Yeah.
Strangle him.
And
Victor Hanson show, the 900, strangle him, the old Bizarro Victor, the real old one, and the fake new one.
Do check out The Blade of Perseus if you have not yet, victorhanson.com. And as for me, Jack Fowler, I write Civil Thoughts, free weekly email newsletter for the Center for Civil Society. It comes out every Friday. It has 14 recommended readings, totally free. I'm not selling your name. You're going to like it. I know you're going to like it. Go to civilthoughts.com, sign up. Please and thank you. Victor, you've been terrific. Thanks, folks, for listening. Thanks for watching. We'll be back soon with another episode of Victor Davis Hanson, in his own words. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody, for listening.
Thank you for tuning in to the Daily Signal. Please like, share, and subscribe to be notified for more content like this. You can also check out my own website at victorhanson.com and subscribe for exclusive features in addition.